My name is Gerald McKenna. I'm 63 years old, and I've spent the last 31 years of my life operating heavy equipment in the oil sands up near Fort McMurray, Alberta. Fly in, fly out. 3 weeks on, 1 week off. That's been my rhythm for as long as I can remember. And if you're watching this right now, I need you to take a moment, because what I'm about to tell you is something that shattered everything I thought I knew about my own family. It happened inside my own home, in a quiet neighborhood in Barrie, Ontario, while I was 2,000 kilometers away, convinced I was doing the right thing by providing for the people I loved most. What I discovered didn't just change my life, it saved my grandsons. And maybe, if you listen carefully, it might help you save someone too. If my story speaks to you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It means more to this old man than you know. Subscribe to Father's Private Revenge so you don't miss what's coming next. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Whether it's midnight in Halifax or early morning in Victoria, I want to know. It makes this grandfather's heart full to know someone out there is listening. Let me take you back to the beginning. My grandson, Noah, was the light of my retirement years. My son, Tyler, passed away in a workplace accident when Noah was only 3. A scaffolding collapse at a construction site in Mississauga. The company paid out through WSIB and there was a settlement, but no amount of money replaces a father. After Tyler died, his wife, my daughter-in-law Bridget, became Noah's sole parent. I stepped up however I could. I had just retired from the oil sands, finally done with the camps and the flights and the weeks away. My wife Helen had passed 2 years before Tyler from pancreatic cancer, so it was just me, rattling around in a 3-bedroom house in Barrie, with nothing but time and a pension check from Suncor that kept the lights on. For a while, things seemed all right. Bridget was a dental hygienist at a clinic on Bayfield Street. She worked regular hours. Noah went to daycare, then junior kindergarten at Prince of Wales Public School. I'd pick him up 3 afternoons a week, take him to Centennial Park, buy him a hot chocolate at Tim Hortons. He called me Papa Jerry. He was a bright, chatty kid, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue, Papa? Why do geese fly in a V? Why does the lake smell different in winter? He reminded me so much of Tyler at that age that sometimes it physically hurt to look at him. The shift happened gradually. So gradually that I almost missed it entirely. Noah was about 6.5 when I first started noticing things. It was a Saturday afternoon. I'd come by the house to take him to the Barrie Colts game. I'd picked up the tickets weeks in advance because Noah loved hockey, loved the noise and the energy of the arena. But when I arrived, he didn't come bounding to the door the way he usually did. Bridget answered, looking perfectly composed, hair pulled back, fresh coffee in hand. "Oh, he's been a little under the weather," she said. "I think he's better off staying home today." I was disappointed, but I figured kids get sick. It happens. Can I at least pop in and say hello? She hesitated for just a moment so brief I almost didn't catch it. "Sure," she said, "but don't get him all riled up. He needs rest." I went to his room and found him sitting on his bed, staring at a picture book without turning the pages. "Hey, bud," I said, sitting beside him. "Heard you're not feeling great." He looked up at me, and something in his face stopped me cold. His eyes, which were usually full of mischief and curiosity, looked hollow, flat, and there were shadows under them. Dark circles that made him look years older than 6. "I'm okay, Papa," he said quietly. "I just don't feel like going out." That wasn't the Noah I knew. The Noah I knew would have begged me to take him even with a runny nose, but I didn't push. I kissed his forehead and told him we'd go to the next game. On my way out, I mentioned the dark circles to Bridget. She waved it off. "He's been having trouble sleeping. Probably growing pains." "He's fine, Gerald. Don't worry so much." But I did worry. Over the next few weeks, every time I visited, Noah seemed a little more withdrawn. He stopped asking me questions. He stopped laughing at my terrible jokes. When I took him to the park, he'd sit on the bench instead of running to the swings. One afternoon, I noticed him flinch when Bridget called his name from the kitchen. Not a startled flinch, like when someone sneaks up on you. A different kind, the kind that comes from anticipating something painful. I brought it up with Bridget again. I tried to be gentle about it. "I think Noah might be going through something," I said. "Maybe we should take him to see Dr. Patterson. Have you considered he might need to talk to someone?" Bridget's expression hardened for just a second before she smoothed it over with a polite smile. He's fine, Gerald. Boys go through phases. Tyler was the same at this age, remember? You're overthinking it. She invoked my dead son's name so casually, and it worked for a while. I second-guessed myself. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe losing Tyler had made me paranoid about Noah. Maybe she was right, and I was just an anxious old man looking for problems. But then something happened that I couldn't explain away. It was a Tuesday evening, early November. The kind of cold, gray Ontario evening where the wind comes off Lake Simcoe and cuts right through you. I had come by to drop off Noah's birthday present early because I was heading to my brother's place in Thunder Bay for the weekend. Bridget wasn't expecting me. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me years ago. The house was quiet. I assumed they might be upstairs. So I set the wrapped gift on the kitchen table and was about to call out when I heard something that froze me in place. It was Noah's voice, coming from the basement, very faint, very small. Please, I'll be good. I'll be good. I promise. Then Bridget's voice, low and controlled, with a coldness I had never heard from her. You said that last time. And what happened? You embarrassed me in front of Mrs. Chen at school. Mrs. Chen was Noah's grade 1 teacher. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, barely breathing. I heard what sounded like something striking flesh, a dull, rhythmic thud followed by a muffled whimper. My grandson was trying not to cry. There was a long silence. Then Bridget spoke again. Now go wash your face. And if your grandfather asks, you fell off your bike. Understood? I heard a tiny, broken yes. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd have a cardiac episode right there in the hallway. I had maybe 30 seconds before they came up those stairs. I moved as fast as my 63-year-old legs could carry me, slipped back through the front door, and stood on the porch trying to control my breathing. Then I rang the doorbell as if I had just arrived. When Bridget opened the door, she was smiling. Gerald, what a nice surprise. Behind her, I could see Noah coming up from the basement, his face freshly washed but his eyes red-rimmed. Hey, bud, I said, forcing the biggest smile of my life. I brought your birthday present early. He looked at me, then glanced at his mother. And something about that glance, the way he checked her expression before reacting, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the first time. This had been happening for a long time. I stayed for 20 minutes. I drank the coffee Bridget offered. I watched Noah open his present, a Lego set he'd been wanting, and I watched him smile with his mouth while his eyes stayed dead. And I watched Bridget perform the role of loving mother with a skill that terrified me. When I left, I sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time. I was crying, not the quiet, dignified kind, the ugly kind, where your chest heaves and snot runs down your face and you grip the steering wheel until your knuckles go white. My grandson, my Tyler's boy, being beaten in that basement while I'd been showing up with hot chocolates and hockey tickets like a fool. I didn't go to Thunder Bay that weekend. I canceled on my brother, told him something came up. Instead, I went to Staples on Mapleview Drive and then to Best Buy. I bought a micro camera, the kind that looks like a small black cube no bigger than a die. The young woman at Best Buy showed me how it connected to an app on my phone, how it recorded to cloud storage, how it had night vision. I felt like a spy in some movie, except there was nothing glamorous about it. I was a grandfather trying to document the abuse of his 6-year-old grandson. The next time I visited Bridget's house, which was 2 days later, I made sure to arrive when she was picking Noah up from school. I used my spare key, went straight to the basement, and found the spot where I believed the abuse was happening. There was an old rec room down there with wood-paneled walls and a worn couch. On the wall, I noticed a small dent in the drywall at roughly the height of a child's head. My stomach turned. I placed the camera on a shelf between some storage bins, angled to capture the entire room. I tested it twice on my phone, hands trembling the whole time. Then I went upstairs, placed a second camera in Noah's bedroom, hidden in a bookshelf behind a row of Berenstain Bears books. If she was hurting him in more than one place, I needed to see it all. That night, I sat in my living room with my phone in my lap and waited. At 9:47 p.m., the basement camera activated on motion. I watched Bridget walk down the stairs with Noah in front of her. She was carrying a wooden spoon in one hand and had a roll of packing tape tucked under her arm. "Sit down," she said, pointing to a chair in the middle of the room. Noah sat without a word. His little body was rigid with fear. Bridget tore off a strip of tape and placed it over his mouth. My blood went cold. "This is because you told your grandfather you didn't want to go outside last week." He noticed Noah. He asked me questions. When people ask questions, it causes problems. "Do you understand?" Noah nodded, tears already streaming down his face. She began hitting him with the wooden spoon. On his back, his arms, his legs. She avoided his face and his hands, the places people would see. She was methodical. She was practiced. She had done this dozens of times. Every hit that landed on my grandson's body landed on my soul. I wanted to drive over there and break that door down, but I knew from what happened with Tyler's settlement, from years of dealing with lawyers and systems, that I needed irrefutable evidence. Bridget was smart. She was careful. She hit where clothes would cover. She taped his mouth so neighbors wouldn't hear. If I burst in, it would be my word against hers. And I was just the grandfather. Courts in this country, for all the good they do, tend to favor mothers. I needed the kind of proof that no judge could dismiss. So I recorded. For 2 nights, I recorded. Each night, the same ritual. Basement, tape, wooden spoon, and each night a different justification. One night it was because Noah had spilled milk at dinner. The next, because he'd taken too long in the bath. The reasons didn't matter to her. The violence was the point. On the second night, I caught something else on the recording that made everything worse. After putting Noah to bed, Bridget called someone. The bedroom camera picked up her voice from the hallway. "Mom," she said, "he's getting harder to manage. He keeps giving me these looks, like he wants to tell someone." There was a pause. Then, "Yeah, I know. You always said Tyler was the same way when he was little, and look how he turned out fine." I went numb. Her mother. Noah's other grandmother. She knew. She had always known. And worse, the implication in that conversation was that Bridget's mother had done the same to Tyler when he was a child. My son. My boy, who never told me. Who grew up and never said a word. Who went to work one morning and never came home. And now I was learning that his childhood might have been full of a pain I never knew about. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Tyler's old room. The room I'd kept exactly as it was. Hockey posters on the wall. Participation trophies on the shelf. And I wept for my son, for what he might have endured in silence, for what was now happening to his child. And I swore on everything I had left that the cycle would end with me. The next morning, I did not hesitate. I drove straight to the Barrie Police Service on Ferndale Drive. I walked in, asked to speak with someone about child abuse, and was taken to a detective named Constable Angela Whitfield. I showed her everything, the videos from both cameras, the audio of Bridget's phone call with her mother. I gave her dates, times, descriptions. She watched the footage with the expression that shifted from professional composure to barely contained horror. "Mr. McKenna," she said when it was done, "you did the right thing. This is serious. We're going to act on this today." Within hours, things moved fast. The Children's Aid Society of Simcoe County was contacted. A social worker named Patricia was assigned to the case. Constable Whitfield and 2 officers went to Bridget's house that afternoon. They brought a CAS worker with them. I wasn't there for the arrest, but Constable Whitfield told me later that Bridget denied everything at first. Said I was a bitter old man trying to take her son away. Said I had never accepted her into the family. But when they told her about the video evidence, her face went white. They found the wooden spoon in a kitchen drawer. They found rolls of packing tape in the basement. They found old bruises on Noah's torso when the CAS worker examined him at the hospital. Some were fresh, some were yellowed and fading. Layers of pain, stacked on top of each other like geological strata. A history of violence written on my grandson's body. Noah was placed in my care that same evening, under an emergency custody order. When I picked him up from the CAS office, he was sitting in a small room with a coloring book and a juice box, looking so small and so lost. When he saw me, he ran to me and buried his face in my chest. "Papa," he whispered, "she's going to be so angry." "No, she's not, Bud," I said, picking him up even though my back screamed in protest. "Because you're coming home with Papa, and she can't hurt you ever again." He pulled back and looked at me with those big brown eyes, Tyler's eyes, and asked the question that broke me all over again. You know? I know, I said. And it's not your fault. None of it. Not a single bit, he cried then. Really cried. The kind of crying he'd been holding in for who knows how long. And I held him in that little CAS office and let him cry until he had nothing left. The first weeks were the hardest. Noah would wake up screaming at 2, 3 in the morning. He'd wet the bed and be mortified. And I'd tell him it was nothing, that it happened to everyone, that we'd just put on fresh sheets and try again. He was terrified of the basement in my house even though it was completely different from Bridget's. He wouldn't go down there. So I moved his things up to Tyler's old room. And that's where he slept. I enrolled him in counseling through a program at the Royal Victoria Regional Health Center. His therapist, Dr. Sarah Fong, specialized in childhood trauma. She was patient, warm, and brilliant with kids. After a few sessions, she asked to speak with me privately. Gerald, she said, Noah has been enduring this for approximately 14 months. The abuse was systematic and escalating. His mother used isolation, threats, and physical punishment to maintain control. She also told him that no one would believe him, especially not you. That hit me like a truck. She told him I wouldn't believe him? I said, my voice cracking. She told him that if he said anything, he'd be taken away and put in a group home where things would be even worse. She used his fear of losing you as leverage to keep him silent. I put my head in my hands. All those afternoons at Centennial Park, all those hot chocolates. He was sitting right next to me, terrified, and I had no idea. How do I fix this? Dr. Fong smiled gently. You're already fixing it. You believed what you saw. You acted immediately. You didn't second-guess yourself or give her the benefit of the doubt when you had evidence. Do you know how rare that is? Most adults in your position convince themselves they must be mistaken. You didn't. But I didn't catch it sooner, I argued. If I had paid more attention, if I had pressed harder months ago, he wouldn't have suffered as long. Self-blame is natural, she said. But Gerald, abusers are extraordinarily good at concealment. Bridget maintained a flawless image. She was active in the school council. She volunteered at the food bank. She was charming and composed in public. Nobody suspected a thing because she designed it that way. Dr. Fong was right about that. In the weeks following the arrest, I heard from neighbors and parents at the school who were shocked. Not Bridget, they said. She was so involved. She was so sweet. She brought muffins to the bake sale. The disbelief was almost universal, and it taught me something important. Abusers don't wear signs. They wear smiles. The legal process moved forward. Bridget was charged with assault causing bodily harm to a minor under the criminal code. The Crown prosecutor, a sharp woman named Claire Dubois, told me the video evidence was among the most compelling she had seen. Additionally, Cass pursued a parallel process regarding custody. Bridget's mother, Donna, was also investigated. While they couldn't prove she had physically participated in the abuse, the audio recording of the phone call demonstrated knowledge and encouragement. She was named in the Cass file and barred from unsupervised contact with Noah. This was something I insisted on, and I was glad the court agreed. That woman knew what was happening to my grandson, possibly knew what had happened to my son, and did nothing. Worse, she encouraged it. She treated violence against children as normal, as tradition, as something that produced results. Whatever accountability she faced, it wasn't enough. Bridget initially fought for custody. She hired a lawyer and argued that I was too old to raise a child, that my health wasn't reliable, that I had violated her privacy by installing cameras. Her lawyer tried to get the video evidence thrown out. The judge denied the motion, noting that the safety of a child superseded the privacy rights of an adult inflicting harm on that child in a private residence. It was a tense few months. I won't pretend I wasn't scared. The legal system is complicated and slow, and there were moments when I thought maybe she'd find a way to get him back, find some angle, some procedural loophole, but the evidence held. Noah gave a testimony through a closed-circuit video arrangement at the courthouse in Barrie, with Dr. Fong present for support. He was so brave, braver than I've ever been. He told the judge in his quiet, careful voice exactly what his mother did to him. When it was over, he asked me if he'd done a good job. You did perfectly, bud, I told him. You are the bravest kid I've ever known. The judge granted me permanent custody. Bridget was convicted and sentenced to 18 months of conditional supervision, mandatory counseling, and 200 hours of community service. She was prohibited from unsupervised contact with any minor. Some people thought the sentence was too light. Frankly, so did I. But the Crown told me that for a first-time offense involving a family member, the sentence was within the expected range. Canadian courts prioritize rehabilitation, she explained. I understood the principle even if it left a bitter taste in my mouth. What mattered most was that Noah was safe. Legally, permanently, irrevocably safe. It's been almost 4 years now. Noah is 10. And if you could see him today, you'd see a different child from the frightened boy I found in that CAS office. We live in the same house in Barrie, the one where Tyler grew up. Noah sleeps in Tyler's old room, which we've repainted together in the blue and white of the Toronto Maple Leafs, because somehow, despite being born in a Colts town, the kid fell in love with the Leafs. I've forgiven him for it. He still sees Dr. Fong once a month. The nightmares have mostly stopped. He's got a group of friends at school, and he plays rep hockey in the winter and soccer in the spring. He's a decent student, excellent in reading, a bit wobbly in math, but we work on that together at the kitchen table after dinner. Last summer, we drove out to Killarney Provincial Park and spent 4 days canoeing and camping. Just the two of us, and the bugs and the loons. On the second night, sitting by the fire, Noah looked at me and said, "Papa, do you think my dad would be proud of me?" I had to take a breath before I could answer. "Your dad would be the proudest father on earth," I told him, "and wherever he is, I promise you he's watching and smiling." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you think Mom ever loved me?" That question, every time it comes, and it's come a few times now, it never gets easier. I told him what I believe to be true. I think your mom has problems inside herself that made it very hard for her to love you the way you deserved. That's not your fault. It was never your fault. Not for a single second. He doesn't ask about Bridget often, Doctor. Fong says that's healthy, that he's protecting himself, and that one day, when he's older, he might choose to explore that relationship on his own terms. Or he might not. Either way, it'll be his choice. Bridget's mother, Donna, has tried to contact us twice, once through a letter, once through a mutual acquaintance. Both times she insisted that what happened was exaggerated, that children need firm discipline, that the world has gone soft. I didn't respond. Some people are beyond reaching, and my energy belongs to Noah now. I've made adjustments to my life that I never expected at 63. I learned to braid hair for Crazy Hair Day at school because Noah insisted on having a mohawk braid, and I watched 6 YouTube tutorials to get it right. I've become the grandfather who shows up at every school assembly, every parent-teacher conference, every hockey tournament. I pack his lunches with a little note every day. Sometimes it's a joke. Sometimes it's just "Papa loves you." He pretends to be embarrassed by the notes, but I've seen him save them in a shoebox under his bed. A few months ago, I was invited to speak at a community event organized by the Children's Aid Society. They asked me to share our story to encourage other family members to trust their instincts when something seems wrong. I was nervous. Public speaking isn't exactly in my wheelhouse, but I thought about Tyler, about what might have been different if someone had looked closer when he was small, and I said yes. After I spoke, an older woman approached me. She was crying. She told me her son-in-law had been leaving marks on her granddaughter, but she'd been afraid to say anything because her daughter kept insisting everything was fine. "Your story," she said, squeezing my hand with both of hers. "You made me realize I can't wait. I have to act now." I gave her Constable Whitfield's card. I heard later that an investigation was opened. I don't know the outcome, but I know that woman decided to stop being a bystander, and that's everything. That's what I want to leave you with. If you're watching this, and something feels wrong with a child in your life, pay attention. Don't convince yourself it's a phase. Don't wait for someone else to notice. Children can't always tell you what's happening. Sometimes they tell you with silence, with flinches, with dark circles, with a spark going out in their eyes. Be the person who sees it. Be the person who acts. Violence against a child is not discipline. It is not culture. It is not tough love. It is not what builds character. It is abuse, plain and simple. and every single child deserves at least one adult who will fight for them without hesitation. That camera I bought at Best Buy saved my grandson's life. A $60 piece of technology gave me the proof I needed to pull Noah out of a nightmare and give him back his childhood. If I had ignored my gut, if I had believed Bridget's excuses one more time, my grandson might still be sitting in that basement, mouth taped shut, waiting for someone to care enough to look. Every night before bed, Noah and I have the same routine. He brushes his teeth, gets into his pajamas, and we read together for 20 minutes. Then I tuck him in and he says, "Good night, Papa. Love you." And I say, "Good night, bud. Love you more." It's simple. It's small. But after everything we've been through, those words are the most important ones I speak all day. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button for this old grandpa. Subscribe to Father's Private Revenge so you don't miss the next story I tell from the heart. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I love knowing whether it's snowing in Winnipeg or sunny in Kelowna or the middle of the night in Street John's. Your comments light up my evenings. And if you've been through something similar, if you've had to make a difficult choice to protect a child, or if you wish someone had made that choice for you, share your story. You never know who might read it and find the courage to act. A big hug from Barrie, Ontario. Take care of the little ones. They're counting on us.